Right, ready?
Yeah. What?
I don't know, just the noise you made then was funny. That I might include that as the intro. That noise you made then was just so funny for no reason. Right, ready?
Yeah. This is the intro.
I've gone. Hello and welcome to the Claret podcast. I'm Dan Rolinson, joined by John Townley this lovely Monday morning to discuss Aston Villa's win over Fulham and look ahead to the next fixture this weekend, and also answer your audience questions. We've had loads sent in, some serious, some nonsense as always. John, how are you, mate? Everything okay?
Yeah, doing well. Thank you, Dan. Great weekend for the Villa, moving back into top four. I was reluctant to kind of look at Tottenham's result during the game. At half time, I didn't even check, but it was like kind of announced at Craven Cottage, and it was like 1-0 Wolves, and I was like, oh, what? So I checked it again like straight after half time when the second half started, and Tottenham had equalised straight away. So I was like, okay, well, as long as we do our bit. But yeah, at full time, I had to change my match report because it was like, oh, actually Villa now and back in the top four. So fully expected Tottenham just to make a comeback, but they didn't. And I watched the highlights, and they probably should have lost by a few goals. I won't continue to talk about Wolves and Tottenham, but on the way back from the game, I was with some Wolves fans as well. And they were talking Villa up a lot and saying how Tottenham aren't as good as Villa and that sort of stuff. So yeah, really good weekend for Villa. Excellent performance. Shame that we had to have like 20 minutes of suffering at the end because of a little error. But yeah, the results are what matters. Is what matters. Sorry, at this point of the season. So yeah, perfect.
Yeah, Villa just need to keep doing their own job, don't they? That's the key thing. It doesn't really matter what Man United and Spurs do to a lesser extent. If Villa keep winning, they will finish in the top five. But obviously, it's always nice to extend any points gap where you can. Even a draw for Spurs would have been a good weekend for Villa. So the fact that they go on to lose it is excellent to see. Bonus indeed. Just before we get into the questions, what's your kind of summary of that Fulham game? Because it wasn't one that we were looking at as like, oh, it's easy, like Villa, they should be winning this, and whilst they should be winning it on paper, Fulham away is not a great place for us as a club. They're a solid mid-table side, not really threatened of relegation, not going to push forward and get into Europe, certainly not this season. But certainly a game you look at and go, oh, that's tough. Like a draw is probably, you might think that's okay. So to go there and win with relative ease is very encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, just 5 words: the return of Pau Torres. That was that's the main point for me. The way that we were so composed, we controlled the game, as I say, up until that defensive lapse between Martinez and Longley. Longley was excellent up until that point. And to be honest, it's hard to blame him because I do think Martinez must have given him a call. He was going to claim the ball. And I think if we were only 1-0 up, Longley just puts that in Rose and there's no issue. So, yeah, fantastic performance from Villa. I thought, again, up until that mistake, I thought that was actually our best away performance of the season in terms of how we controlled the game. I know we beat Sheffield United 5-0, but that was, we have, you can only beat what's in front of you, but that
most teams are going to batter Sheffield United.
Yeah, and they really aren't a Premier League team, whereas Fulham absolutely are. They had the 8th best home record in the division. Only 3 teams scored more goals than them since the 27th of November. Like, this was a game which Villa, I think, if we drew it, depending on the context of the game, we would have probably taken it, as long as we then beat Forest and probably beat Luton. Because I said before, you want at least 7 points out of these 3 games going into the game against Tottenham, and there's every chance we could get 9 now. We have to do our job against Forest. It's crucially important. Every game right now just feels like a final, and it's a lot of pressure because there's 13 of them left, in the league. Hopefully we have an actual final in May, but yeah, it was an excellent performance from Villa. The way they played, the way that they was set up, obviously wasn't, that back 4 hadn't played with each other at all before. McGinn dropping back into the holding position. I thought, to be honest, in the first half, he was kind of just adapting to that again. He hadn't played that role for a bit of time. And he lost the ball, I think, twice, which could have cost Villa. But then in the second half, like after the match, the first thing I said to one of the reporters that I was with was, "There's no player that I'd rather have than John McGinn on that pitch in the last 10 minutes of the game, because he was everywhere. He was like, a man possessed, trying to win the ball back, just putting his body on the line. Like, we've had 3 ACLs this season, lots of different other injuries, niggly injuries, long-term injuries, and John McGinn's still, willing to break a leg for the cause." And
hopefully not literally.
No, and he'd probably play next week even if he did. He was an example of what we have to do for the rest of the season. Basically, play some good football, but then in periods of games, we are going to have to put bodies on the line, defend manfully, and that's what we did. We still had to call on Emi Martinez to make a top save at the end of the game, but I don't really care because we got the points. You know what I mean? There's little things that we can nitpick and here and there, but ultimately we deserve to win that game 3-0 probably, because we should have had a penalty. The goal that we conceded was poor, but yeah, it almost makes it sweeter at the end of those matches when we have suffered, as I say, for a large proportion of it. But yeah, up until that mistake, I thought we were excellent, to be honest. Possibly the best away performance of the season for me.
I just want to pick up on something you said there during that last answer. Are you aware of the Football Cliches podcast?
I've heard of it. I haven't listened to it though.
Okay, I've only discovered it recently, and I've been binge listening to. Obviously, there's loads of episodes of it formerly on The Athletic. It's obviously about like the discussion of the cliches in football and the language used around.
How many did I use there?
Yeah, exactly. Can you have 13 cup finals? Is that something you just said? Every game feels like a cup final. 13 cup finals feels like a lot. Surely you say like 5 cup finals.
Trophies. No, but as in every game now, we're going into. I
know what you mean, but it just sounds silly, doesn't it? 13 cup finals.
I understand. And like, I hate the phrase of this is a must win. So it's rich coming from me, especially. But we are in that zone now of this is. This isn't literally the run-in, but it feels like it is, because we dropped points against Forest and it feels like the world, everything's gone.
I know what you mean.
Again, like last week after the United game, it was, all right, well, 6th wouldn't be so bad. That, it was that kind of mentality. Whereas now it's like, oh no, we could definitely still get top 4. We could definitely still get top 5. But that's never changed, and it won't change up until the last 6 games of the season, possibly. But to kind of avoid those feelings of pressure and kind of overreaction, we need to beat Forest, because now is the part of the season where you have to put wins together in a row. You can't just win one, lose one, win one, lose one. We need to beat Forest, and we probably need to, at least get a draw against Luton. We need to probably beat them, to be honest. They are, for as well as they have done this season for Luton, they're still 4th bottom. So we need to be going there and winning, right? And then you're going to go into that. Yeah, then you're going to go into that Tottenham game with, we should be above them by then, I'd have thought, because of the games that we have. We have to respect Forest and Luton, but those are games that would be favourites to win. But we know that we still have to play City away, Arsenal away, Liverpool at home. That, I don't know what the situation will be there, whether Liverpool could win the league on that day, whether they need to win to stay in the fight until the last day, whether we need to win it to secure something or to be in the hunt for something. That could be a huge game. So that isn't, in any way, shape or form, it wouldn't have been a banker anyway. But that's another, there was just 3 games. Brighton away before that's going to be incredibly difficult because they'll be going for Europe, I presume. West Ham away, for me anyway, looks difficult because you don't know what's going to happen with Moyes. That could be a game that is, to save his job, or maybe they have a new manager. I don't know. So almost in every game, there's a bit of context which makes it look difficult. And that's why I'm saying they're all finals, because I think our fixture list is very difficult. You look at Forest and Brentford, is probably our 2 most winnable games, I suppose, at home. But Forest are fighting to stay in the division. Brentford need points and are better because they've got Ivan Toney back. So every game is going to be tough, and we have to just narrow it down to, right, we have to beat Forest Saturday. And then we don't think about Luton yet. We think about it as soon as the full-time whistle goes. That's just the way we're going to have to do it now.
Just be careful of you banging your desk or whatever you got in front of you. You're making a couple of rattly noises.
Too much passion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the last week of podcasts from us, from United and Kamara last week to obviously Fulham, and then today's show, obviously a lot more positive of where we are, is kind of the demonstration of taking one game at a time because so much can change so quickly. Even if we'd have won on the weekend and so did Spurs, we'd still not have gone up into the top four. But the case that they also lost has catapulted us from thinking last week, oh, maybe Europa League is what we need to kind of go for here because the injuries are mounting up and this is going to be difficult, to 7 days later going, well, Spurs have lost. We've won. We're in fourth. Yeah. Come on, let's go for Forest, go Luton, go Spurs. Like, kind of getting ahead of ourselves. But you're absolutely right. If you don't beat Forest next weekend, it is going to be, you're going to talk about missed opportunities and all these kind of things. So to look ahead of like that fixture might be difficult, and that one could be a new manager and all that kind of stuff is way too far to be looking forward. But I know what you mean, and I will ask you later on like a points total for the next few games. But for now, it's just like beat Forest. That is our only target for the season. Beat that, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, and the fixtures we have, I said they are tough. We have Chelsea at home, and Chelsea perform better against better teams, it seems, and obviously they beat us, pretty convincingly in the FA Cup. Wolves at home will be horrible. You say Brighton away. Well, they're a good team, Wolves, with the pace of Neto, with the organisation. They've got 2 midfielders, Gomez and Lamina, completely bullied Tottenham. As I say, the 2 away games that we have, West Ham away, Tottenham at home. I just think the next, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 games. So your Forest, Luton, Tottenham, West Ham, Wolves, those are key matches. We need to be taking points there because then you have City away, Arsenal away. Like Bournemouth at home, even that's difficult for me anyway. Maybe I'm underplaying us, and what I would say is that every game is difficult if you're playing Aston Villa. But then I just think on the flip side, there's no easy game for us. There really isn't. Everyone has got something to play for, and there's lots of context on each of those games. But yeah, we'll get onto it later. I just think we've won against Fulham, fantastic, but now we have to keep going. With the 13 games left, a lot can change and quickly, as we've just seen in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we spoke on the post-match show about how many wins Villa may need, and I've got the Premier League table open here. And we talked a lot earlier in the season about our away form not being very good. Up until Man United played yesterday, we were 4th in the away league table. We're now down to 5th, 21 points away from home, and 28 points at home. Villa are on 49 points at the moment, and mid to late 60s is generally good enough as an average for 5th, and 70-ish is generally good enough for 4th as an average. So Villa need 21 points to get to 70. That's 7 wins from 13. That doesn't sound impossible to me. You could win 1 and lose 1 for the remainder of the season and probably just about win enough to get 70 points.
Yeah, it's absolutely doable. And I've said before, I think Aston Villa will get Champions League football this season, even after Kamara's injury. Like on that depressing podcast we did, I said a few times, like I still think Villa are going to get top 5, top 4. It just makes it a lot harder, and I stand by that because we've got, don't forget, however many more Conference League games and the pressure that brings and the energy we're going to have to exert in those matches. We played the round of 16 either side of Tottenham. Tottenham game is huge. So I just think it's such a long way yet until the end of the season, even though it's all going to happen very quickly, which I don't think helps in terms of we playing all those games in the next 3 months. But yeah, absolutely, Villa can win 7 out of 13, possibly more. I don't know, but all of those games will be difficult. I have no doubt about it whatsoever. As I say, you go through the fixture lists, and I would prefer Tottenham's fixture list or Man United's fixture list, put it that way. But I would prefer Aston Villa's team. Do you know what I mean? So we are at the moment the 4th hardest team to play against in the Premier League. We can't forget that. But as I say, playing Wolves at home fills me with a bit of trepidation. Going to Brighton towards the end of the season, playing Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal away, all those games are difficult. We can certainly do it, but we just have to now focus. Forest, 3 points on Saturday, then the next one, then the next one.
Right then, on to viewer questions then, John. We've got loads sent in this week. I'm going to try and do them in a random order, but as we've just been talking about Fulham, let's get one of those out of the way first. This is from David, who says, this question comes from my 10-year-old son, James. He asks, should Ollie Watkins have been awarded a penalty, and how are we still having these issues with VAR and officiating when something like that was a stonewall penalty? Which I really like as, again, a well-written question for a 10-year-old and a well-thought-out question. Absolutely. We should have had a penalty on Ollie Watkins. And yes, I also don't understand why these conversations are still happening. Obviously, it was the referee. I haven't got his name to hand, but it was his first game refereeing at Premier League level. On a couple of occasions, VAR could have helped him out it seems, and didn't. That one on Ollie Watkins is a stonewall penalty, as you'll see, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and that's why the last 20 minutes were so difficult, because you just knew that something was going to happen after we should have had a penalty to make it 3-1. I think that wasn't to make it 3-0. I think it was 3-1. So we responded well to them scoring that goal, but yeah, clear penalty. I don't know why it wasn't given. And the kind of second part of James's question about, why are we getting so many decisions or whatever it may be, it's across the league. Like the West Ham, I don't know if you've seen it, Dan, the West Ham penalty, or the penalty that West Ham should have given away. I think it was Nico Williams who was in the box, and then I don't know who the defender was, but he's stamped on his foot, and how that can't be a penalty. It's mental. Kind of different to Ollie Watkins is, but the same premise. If the player is in on goal, he has the ball under his control and he's taken out. Like, that's as simple as it gets for a penalty. So I don't know. Should have been a penalty. Should have kind of extended our goal difference, I suppose. And maybe this part of the season we do need to think about that. At the moment, we have a good buffer. Well, a buffer that is almost insurmountable, I think, for Man United. I think the Tottenham buffer is only 4 goals, mate. 4 or 5, yeah. Again, that can change in the space of a couple of weeks. So, goal difference will be important, I think, as well, especially if it's like a 3-horse race for 4th, 5th, as we think it is at the moment. So, yeah, should have had a penalty, should have won by more goals, but yeah, 3 points was the most important thing, I suppose.
Next question is from Janislav, who says, is Torres the best centre-half in the division? And also comments that Tielemans to Watkins was a beautiful assist, and one that he's done a number of times already. Is Tielemans a bit underrated with fans? We'll take the Tielemans part first. I think we'll talk about Torres for longer. What have you made of Tielemans' impact, I suppose?
Yeah, he's a player, I think I've mentioned it before, who straight away from his first match in pre-season, which I think was against Fulham out in Orlando, I remember just watching him like very closely for the period of time he was on the pitch, because I hadn't seen a player like that play for Villa for a long time. And Luiz is very good with the ball, he's very composed and uses it well. But Tielemans, it's like he has some kind of supernatural skill of weaving between players, finding pockets of space and executing a pass to perfection. Some things will work, some things won't. But when it does come off, which is almost every game, something will happen for Tielemans where we have a clear chance, or he has space to make something happen. That's something that only the top players can do. They find pockets of space. Tielemans isn't the most physically capable player, I suppose, in the Premier League, by a long way, but it says a lot about his quality and his, as I say, he's very skillful with the ball. He can move it well, manipulate it, and that is something that, as I say, to get on a free transfer, of course, he's going to be on a big wage. But I'm shocked that other clubs didn't look at him, because I don't know what club he wouldn't make a positive effect on. I think maybe teams were just put off by what happened with Leicester last season. I don't know. But he is key at the moment how Villa are playing. He plays in that kind of half space behind Watkins, which was, Bailey or Buendia would be playing in that type of role up with Watkins, almost as a second striker. Tielemans will either play off the left when Ramsey isn't playing, but now Ramsey seems to be back in top form. Tielemans is kind of playing more centrally, and again, I think that suits because he can link up with the midfield. Then it's easier for him to get in the games and kind of make that devastating impact where it matters on the pitch. Like for the second goal, he can be picked out in that half space, and then it's a through ball to Watkins and he scores, whereas that wouldn't have happened if he was on the left. It would be a different angle, which changes Villa's approach to the attack. So it's good that he's versatile as well, kind of mentioning all those different things, but ultimately a player who can see things before they happen. It's that kind of classic top midfielder. We were doing that scanning thing, weren't we, with the was it Be Your Best?
Be Your Best, yeah.
Yeah, his scan rate might have been as good as mine, I'm not sure. So
only better than mine.
Top player. Definitely a better scan rate than me. So really pleased to have him again. A player who we missed, I think, due to his injury. Another player that we've missed through injury.
We recorded a video in the office 2 weeks ago, I think maybe, about Youri Tielemans, and it was like how he's so important to Unai Emery playing off the left or coming inside. And we filmed that before the Boubacar Kamara injury, and that made the whole dynamic of that conversation different. We also thought that maybe Tielemans would come in and fill in for Kamara. Obviously, we saw at the weekend that John McGinn is likely going to play that role for the rest of the season, playing centrally, and Tielemans will still play off the left or to support Watkins. So I thought when the Kamara injury news came out that video we filmed was like dead in the water and redundant, and I have kind of consigned it to that. However, if people listening to this or watching this think that they still want to hear us chat about Youri Tielemans for 15, 20 minutes or so, let me know in the comments and I will still put that video out, and have in mind that it was filmed before Kamara was missing, but it still mostly should be relevant. But If you want it, let me know. If you think, leave it in the can. I'll leave it there. Just on Torres, this is the second part of that question. If I can find the right tab, is Torres the best centre half in the division? There was also a question from Holly as well, who says, "Is Pau Torres one of the most underrated? Is Pau Torres one of the most underrated signings in the Premier League? His win percentage with." Our win percentage with him is huge. His ball carrying, duels, pass completion, etc. Something like Villa's win percentage is like 75% with him and 25% without him. I don't know whether that is correct, but I saw it on Twitter before we started filming. We all know how important he is to us, but seeing him back and playing in full flow and being involved is, it's a joy to watch, isn't it?
Wrote a piece similar to, so I forgot who asked the question about the most underrated signing, but I wrote that he has to be up there as one of the best Premier League signings from the summer window. He has to be.
Agreed.
He is absolutely transformational. Like, as we always say, Alex Moreno was last season. Pau Torres is that, and I think a bit more now because the effect, like within the first 2 minutes of us playing against Fulham, my perception of how we were going to play in that match was already, I was much more confident already because he had his arms up like that, kind of whenever Bailey would run down the wing and there was kind of like clearly a blind alley, but have his arms up, like turn back, recycle. But it's not just keeping possession for the sake of it, as we know, because he steps out, draws Paulinho in the Fulham game especially, creates space. It's so intelligent, and I don't know whether that's something that just happened on the day. I doubt it. I presume Emery has kind of told him to do certain things, but bringing the ball out from defence, I think he's still got the second highest ball carrying distance in the Premier League, despite missing the last however many games. I mean, this was his first start since mid-December, so I think it was 2 months to the day that he got the injury against Brentford on Saturday. So absolutely one of the best signings that anyone's made in the Premier League. I don't know if he's the best defender in the Premier League because that you can kind of categorise that in different things, etc. But in terms of ball playing centre backs, he's one of the best in Europe, if not the best. Yeah. That isn't an exaggeration at all. I don't know what team wouldn't want Pau Torres. Again, not to kind of be that guy, but what I'm trying to say is that anyone would want Pau Torres, and it's a positive that Aston Villa basically have assets across the whole team. That you look at Konsa, for example. Well, that's surely a £60 million plus player. Torres is absolutely that as well because, as I say, he's got the skills to be the best centre back in the world at bringing the ball out, playing with it, and dominating an opposition from how he plays. In midfield, it's the same story with Luiz, Kamara, Watkins, Bailey, all these guys. So the squad is littered with talent. There's huge assets there. So whichever way you look at it in terms of, well, will there be interest for our players or will we keep them? There's positives in each sense of that kind of makes sense. So it's fantastic recruitment from Villa to be getting these players, and they're obviously adjusting well. Someone like a Diaby, I think, will take a bit more time, or is taking a bit more time to adapt because Torres is adapted very quickly. But I think it's easier in a way because he plays as a centre back, and Villa are already good enough to dominate teams, but it just allows him to kind of express his skills more, if that makes sense. Whereas Diaby's a bit different because he wants the space and now he doesn't have it, whereas Torres wants the space and he's being given it, that kind of dynamic. So for sure, one of the best signings anyone made in the summer, and that won't be said by the media, by the way, outside, because it would just be a case of who did Chelsea sign? Cole Palmer, who's one of or the only good signing they've made out of like 50 or something, and that he'll be in like the pulse of player of the season and stuff, but probably not a Villa player.
Yeah, absolutely spot on with that. I made a very, very, very basic animation on that I posted on Twitter yesterday of like the dots moving around the screen for like how the goal played out. And you mentioned very intelligent is the right word, but if you watch that goal, and I will put this animation on screen and you'll see it's very basic. There's like 3 Fulham players on it, but just to move like where the spaces are. If you go back and watch that goal a few times over and over, Pau Torres runs with the ball for 10 yards or whatever, but enough to bait one of the Fulham players in. Kind of checks back and plays back to Luiz, there's now a gaping space in midfield because one of the Fulham runners didn't track Pau Torres' movement as left gap, or however it is. If you watch it a few times, you'll see that motion play out, and that's such a basic thing to highlight. Man moves with ball and creates space, but it's something that we weren't doing before, and having him back, just that goal happens because of him, effectively. Even though he's not the guy that plays the assist, he's involved in starting that move off.
Yeah, we completely took Pallinger out the game, and that is half of it well done to John McGinn, or maybe more than half to be fair. But yeah, the way that we moved the ball, Pallinger is arguably one of the best holding midfielders in the division in terms of how he breaks up players, always has the most tackles, interceptions, that stuff. But that was one of his worst games in the Fulham shirt, probably.
He got baited into closing down Luiz as well, didn't he? He tried to go for Torres, missed him, then went over, exerted himself and got to Luiz and left the space. And one of the other Fulham players is like pointing at the space towards Tielemans, and the ball goes into him. McGinn very calm as well on that pass, just to kind of take a second and have a look what's going on. It's a really nice goal, that. Obviously, you look at the final 5 seconds, the finish is great on its own, but everything that came before it, Tielemans also very calm and composed, just to take his time and pick his spot for Watkins, who Watkins makes a brilliant run as well, which is something that I don't think has been talked about enough.
Made it look simple. I vividly remember picking up my head. I missed the Torres stuff because obviously I'm doing my work and stuff. But as soon as the ball was played to Luiz, he was like, okay, you can clearly see the passing sequences here to get to goal. And I was looking at the linesman thinking, well, have I missed something? Because that would look really easy. So credit to us. And just on Pallinger, you walloped McGinn at the end of the game. Not as you didn't, as in a tackle. And he got a yellow card, which kind of compounded his game, but I think now he misses the Man United game. I think he misses 2 games in a row now, which includes Man United away. So wish he didn't do that in the end, but it doesn't matter.
Just on that Watkins goal again, 2 things that I like from watching it back on loop a million times to do that stupid animation thing. I like how he doesn't even take a touch of the ball. Like his first touch is the shot. That's always nice that he's run onto it. The weight of the pass is perfect, but he's run onto it so well that his first touch is the strike. And also the sound of the ball hitting the back of the net. This is, again, a stupid thing to think about, but the way the ball hits the back of the net and hits it so hard that it flies back out onto the pitch, and that little noise it makes. I love stuff like that.
There is a Twitter account, I haven't seen it for a while, that has like goal sounds when it hits the net. The best one was,
nice.
Do you remember Erling Haaland's goal against PSG? You'd remember it if you know the noise. He hits it from distance, and I think it smacked the bar, and then it hit like the stanchion at the back or something. It was like, it's brilliant. But on that Watkins goal, he didn't have much time to think about it, which I think helped because he was straight from the pass. He knew that as long as he
hits it clean,
he hits it clean, it's a goal, because Leno's kind of caught out because he doesn't know whether to come or go.
Nice. All right, let's move on.
Great analysis.
Wayne asks, is Clement Longley the best loan signing in Villa's history?
Wow.
Now, I'll put you on the spot with these. I've not sent you these questions in advance, so I have looked at a couple of loan players I think would be on a list of good ones. So if you need me to fire some names, I can do.
I think that depends on, are we talking quality of player or impact?
It depends how you want to say it.
Presume quality of player, because I can't really look past Tammy Abraham in terms of impact as a loan player. Getting promoted to the Premier League because of that is sort of
quite important, isn't it?
Doesn't get much bigger, really. But in terms of quality of player, have you got any names down? Because I can't think of many.
So the list I've got is Tammy Abraham was at the top as a very obvious one. Scored lots of goals. We get promoted. Yeah, that's got to go down as one of the best. On a weird kind of technicality, I've got Tyrone Mings, who was obviously initially a loan signing and then went on to be a permanent. So again, was important in his loan spell as well. But like the goodness of Tyrone Mings is everything that's followed with it, rather than specifically that 5 months or whatever. And again, I'm going down here on a list of quality. Sam Johnston and Snodgrass were the same season.
Should we just say I mean, the thing is, right, Tielemans, Longley, I think the question means, is he the best player in terms of quality?
Probably.
It must be a good. I can't remember exactly, pre-2015, but there must probably be an argument for it in terms of best quality loan signing, because
you would have Clement Longley as a starting centre back for a lot of other teams, and he's technically our 4th choice.
It's Barcelona, and this is a player again who was kind of maligned at Tottenham because. But it was hard to criticise him, really, when you think about it, because Tottenham were a bit of a basket case under Conte. Lloris isn't a very good goalkeeper anymore, so they shipped a lot of goals. The back 4 in general just wasn't very organised. Midfield, where was the anchor to support players like Longley? So him coming into a team like Villa with one of the best managers in the world, it was always going to help him. And I think he showed that, he is still a good player, a very good player, and playing on the right side of defence. Again, full credit to him for performing so well against Fulham, and it goes some way to kind of relieving my anxiety about how we build up, etc. And I think we will have harder tests than Fulham. Not that Fulham wasn't a hard test, of course it was, but again, City away, Liverpool away, Liverpool at home, Arsenal away. We've got some difficult games to come up. Maybe we'll have. I mean, to be fair, by those late games, Konsa will hopefully be back and playing with Torres maybe, or at right back, which means maybe Longley would continue. I don't know. So it's just again positive to see that even with injuries, we can have. We can still play the way that we want to, at least to a certain extent, which is obviously great. And yeah, Longley probably is win with a shout in terms of best quality, in terms of the player loan signings that we've ever made. I can't think of many more. It must be in the top 5 at least.
The other two that I've got, and these are also technicality ones, is James Milner signed on loan for us in 2005, 2006, but then obviously his best times again come on a permanent move. And a different way to answer the question, who maybe goes on to be a great footballer, but not during his loan spell at Villa, though he wasn't bad, obviously not. Kyle Walker.
Yeah, Kyle Walker
was a loan player for us and did okay, but has gone on to be one of the best right backs in the Premier League ever. As a loan player, come good kind of thing. Is the way I interpreted some of that question. Just on Longley still, so another comment here from Sam, another question. He says, do you think we should sign Clement Longley on a permanent? His performances have been fantastic. He seems to be a great defender and ball player. It's interesting, isn't it? We talk about the two left-footed thing in the Fulham preview, and that turns out not to be an issue for Fulham specifically. It could still be an issue in other games, of course, but against Fulham, it was not a problem at all. When we mentioned Torres coming back as well, and I've got no numbers here to go off or anything, but it felt like every goal kick or most goal kicks went to Torres. I don't think that's just because Torres is important and he starts the move off. I think it also avoids giving it to Longley on his wrong side.
Yeah, and that's just, we mentioned before about if you're a striker pressing Longley, it's pretty obvious you're going to shift him over to his right. So that's
don't put him under pressure from a goal kick.
That still is my worry, because I don't doubt in one of these games we will come up against a striker who just pins himself to Longley and completely shuffles him up, always shuffles him onto his right side, which will cause a problem. But if that happens, then maybe there's more space for Torres. So there is obviously ways to play around it. In terms of signing Longley permanently, yeah, I mean, I'd like to, but Villa obviously have to be careful with what they spend and how they spend it. And of course, we have Tyrone Mings, who should be returning to full training sometime in May. Whether he will play or not is obviously unlikely, very unlikely. But we can't forget that Longley came into the club only because Mings picked up that injury. So I don't think that's something that we need to do. I think it could be the case of, especially if we get Champions League and Longley continues to play well, then it's a win-win for both. Longley either get to move somewhere else, Barcelona get a bit of money for him because he's played well at Villa and he's helped Villa. It would be like a perfect situation for everybody. And then Tyrone Mings comes back in and Villa don't have to spend money on Longley and his big wages, because they are big wages. It's kind of like, well, you've done your job and now we have someone else coming back who we know that we can trust again. Hopefully Mings' injury hasn't kind of set him back in terms of what he can do on the pitch. But if the doctors kind of give him the all clear on that and we see no sort of drop off, because of course the window doesn't shut until, I don't know when it will be in the summer, maybe late August, early September. There's a period of time to kind of assess where Mings is at, but I don't think that's something that we have to forcibly do when we have Mings as a centre-back who was, alongside obviously Konsa, immense last season. So between him and Torres, that's your kind of left side sorted then, and two excellent players to do a job. And then your right side, Konsa and whoever else is going to compete with him next season.
There's 3 questions here that are all kind of along the same theme about injuries. So just rather than picking one and then talking about it for 10 minutes and discounting the others, I'll just read them all out at once and kind of go wherever we need to. So first of all, Danny says, does a depleted squad make the available players even better because they have to step up to their game? Maybe we'll look back at these injury setbacks this season as some kind of blessing in disguise. Mike says, could Kamara being out actually end up helping us in easier games because he's not really needed anyway? And Phil said, if we had no injuries this season, could we have won the league?
If we had no injuries this season, we'd be in the title race still. That's my opinion.
I'm going to say something weirdly stupid or controversial here.
We'd have won the treble.
No, I'm on the other way. I think if Mings and Buendia hadn't got their ACLs at the start of the season, I'm not actually sure we'd have gone on to be as good as we were. in a weird way. So I don't think Torres would have come in as soon as he did, and I don't think we'd have done what we did with those in. And that's just a weird way of saying it. We'll obviously never know, and having more options tends to think, well, you'll be better for it. But maybe Bailey was better because Buendia wasn't there and he had to step up, like things like that. That kind of weird butterfly effect. I think to follow on from that, if we hadn't have had injuries to Konsa, Kamara, and Pau Torres in December, I think we'd have more points than 49 now. Whether that's enough to go on and win the title, I still don't think it would, but I think we'd be on 55 maybe, 6 more points, and we'd be looking at being second now, still, at the end of February. Maybe that's the case.
I'm convinced that we would have beaten Man United twice with Pau Torres.
Certainly once at least.
Yeah, I just think we would have held on at Old Trafford because we would have been calm, composed when we had to be. And at Villa Park, we would have beaten them as well. I know that's easy to say, but that's just my opinion. I think we would have beaten them twice. So that's 6 points for us and -6 for them, which puts us in a very good position to at least get Champions League. And they would put us up amongst City and Arsenal and whatnot. And those are just 2 games, let alone Sheffield United, let alone the games that we drop points in. So the only thing I would say is that this happens during a season. So I don't think we can look at it and think, we should be there, But this is kind of like an exceptional season of we've had 3 ACLs. Like it's almost unimaginable that this happens. Do you
think there's anything in that? Like there's a lot of ACLs across football.
True. Go on. Yeah.
But like, is there something going on that's making the ACL injury more commonplace?
We saw Aaron Ramsey as well from Burnley. Again, like what looks a horrific injury, and we wish him well because that won't be. I can't imagine what that must feel like. You just move to Burnley. You're probably looking at next season where you can really make an impact, probably in the Championship. And now it's been set back with what looks a serious knee injury. We don't know exactly what it is yet. But there's a lot of ACLs throughout world football, and I don't know why that is, Dan.
Is it? I'm a stupid fan here more so than any kind of expert. But is it something in like the boots? Is it something in the turf?
I don't, because it seems like this season in particular, or maybe last season as well. But I don't think anything dramatically changed between playing surface, boots that players wear.
No,
all these things haven't dramatically changed in the last 3 or 4 years, and even if they did with one boot manufacturer, they wouldn't change with all of them. You know what I mean? It's just it doesn't make sense to me that everything would change. And not every club has ripped up their turf and things like that, or even on training pitches. Do you know what I mean? So it's I think it's just a coincidence, but it is crazy. But yeah, to go back to the question, Villa would have more points without their injuries, absolutely, like 100%. And again, though, I just think next season we'll have injuries as well. This could happen again, but this has been an exceptional season because there's so many and they're all so long. Like Kamara's out for the season, Mings, Buendia, Torres has missed 2 months, Dean missed nearly 2 months or so, Tielemans missed about a month.
Ramsey Moreno at the start of the season as well.
Konsa, Carlos, Ramsey Moreno is basically an 11 almost that's missed the season.
How funny is it after the whole time we've been doing the podcast? Leon Bailey, somebody we've always kind of gone, oh, he's never fit. He's one of the only few, touch wood, with John McGinn to not pick an injury off some kind.
Stop talking.
Read out the entire 11 there has picked up an injury off some kind.
Yeah. Well, Bailey, was there a question about Leon Bailey then? Oh no, you mentioned about Bailey and Buendia. I think the Bailey one is
me being stupid.
Yeah, I think it's a bit different in terms of. I think Emery had a chat with him. There's a piece that was on the that I did for obviously on Birmingham Live yesterday. If you want to go and read that about Bailey, you had to sit down with Emery, and Emery was basically saying like you play well at home usually, but away from home you need to play better. And whatever he's said and whatever he's done, it's brought his game on tenfold. Like he's outrageous now. Leon Bailey, like the skill he did past the Robinson and then crashed the bar. That's something that Messi does. Like genuinely, he's showing flashes of being a top winger that could play in any team. So hopefully that continues. Yeah,
just as I don't want to appear to be shoehorning this in, but as we're talking about injuries and sending our best wishes to Aaron Ramsey, as you mentioned there, I'd also like to pass on, not that it's relevant, obviously, the other side of the city, there's not going to be any Birmingham City fans watching this, but Tony Mowbray is missing from touchline duties and active duty as Birmingham City manager for 6 to 8 weeks after a medical diagnosis, and will hopefully be recovering from that as soon as possible. I've seen a lot of well wishes from other football clubs towards him, which is again quite common, but says what kind of guy he is, what character he is to be so well renowned across football. So yes, whilst it's our bitter rivals, we extend our best wishes to Mowbray and his family at what will be a pretty grim time. We don't know what that is, but hopefully that 6 to 8 week return is met and he's back kind of fighting fit.
Yeah, football rivalry goes like completely out the window here. It's clearly whatever it is, it's clearly serious if it's that kind of prolonged period, and full recovery hopefully for Mowbray, and that he can be back as soon as possible for Birmingham. It's say whatever club, whoever it is, it really doesn't matter. It's this is about a human being at the end of the day. So a full recovery for Mowbray, and I'm sure Villa, all the fans as well, would send him the best.
I'm going to do another 3-question whammy here because they're all very similar. Firstly, Jordan says, do you think we'll see Big Tim play more in Kamara's absence and any other youth players come through the rest of the year? I know one critique of Emery at Arsenal was not bringing through youth. As long as we are winning, that's the main thing, but always nice to see the academy. Now, the kind of, again, like the tribalism nature of football, that everyone's got their own opinion and it's all very different. 2 contrasting questions here. They're on the same theme, but with a different message. Dr. AVFC says, do you think Irabuna will be given a chance to fill in for Kamara? Again, same point. Emery had a good reputation for bringing in the youth at Arsenal, for example, Saka and Martinelli, but haven't seen much of that at Villa yet. Yeah, that was my understanding as well, that he's actually good with youth players. Again, we've not seen it massively at Villa yet, but again, Arsenal gave his debut to Smith Rowe, Saka, Martinelli, the guys mentioned there. So it's interesting that the previous question was like, he has a critique of Emery is that his youth integration. And Rob says, finally, can you see any of our young fringe players getting to start a match in the league or the Conference League before the end of the season? And if so, who?
I think probably not, to be honest, in terms of Kessler and Irabuna. Maybe they start here and there if there's an injury to McGinn or Louise. Again, touch wood, that doesn't happen. But I think these are players who will come on kind of, to rest players. If I'm being totally honest, I don't think Emery thinks that they're ready yet. And I know he had a big passionate speech about Tim, which kind of crossed over to Kane as well, in terms of, these are your moments to impress and to continue to work hard. I think what he's saying there is, in the next, 2 years or something, you are going to be playing matches. So right now you have to be learning and you have to be, you're going to have to be ready basically when you're called on. And if you're not ready, then there's your chance gone, sort of thing. So I think it's more of a warning of, we are going to have to rely on you at some point. Probably won't be this season, but then next season it might be, because, as we said before, Villa's transfer strategy, especially in January, they've signed Costa, Novalkovic, Lino Sousa, Gauchi, Rogers, all these players. They will be first team players at some point, and that is to say, I suspect will be in 2 years, 1 year. Whether they start games next season, probably not. But then the season after that, they'll be pushing to play games, and Emery knows how long the process can be for a youth player to be fully ready to make an impact in Premier League games and sustain Aston Villa being as a Champions League pushing club, if that makes sense. So, in terms of the youth at Arsenal, from what I know, as you said there, Dan Martinelli, Smith Rowe and Saka all came through under Emery, and Saka always speaks really highly of Emery as well. So I'm not too sure about, I don't know about, whether he didn't play Balogun or Nketiah or whatever. Maybe that's the kind of the flip side of, he doesn't want to bring through youth. But I think he will play youth when he knows that they're ready. And for example, Cameron Archer, Aaron Ramsey, Jadon Philogene, he was happy to play them, and to be a part of the squad. But there was reasons why they were sold, obviously for financial reasons. So I don't see it as an issue. And as I say, Villa have signed these players not to loan them out in terms of Costa and Lino Sousa for the foreseeable future and then sell them. I don't think that's the case here. I think this is the case of they will be playing under Emery in the next year to 2 years, etc. And as I say, Villa need to be careful with what they spend in the coming seasons as they try and bridge the gap, signing youth players on lower wages, with the opportunity to develop, as we keep saying, under one of the best managers in world football. That's an opportunity for them and they will take it. It's just, they need to be ready when they are called upon. And I think, Tim is further than anyone else. Maybe Kane is there as well, but they've still got a lot to learn and a lot to do, and they will get competitive minutes kind of shortly, whether that's as short as, the coming weeks, because the season ends in 3 months. That's not a long time. So, we saw Tim come on in the last few minutes at Fulham, and he did well for the kind of few minutes that he had. I think he won the ball back twice. And I don't think he misplaced a pass or anything. So, again, good positive experience, but this is now needs to be translated in the coming months and, year or so as to 90 minutes. And again, he's not playing for no disrespect to any of the team further down the league, i.e. Crystal Palace or something, or Forest, but he's playing for a team that's trying to get top 4. So, yeah, they have to be ready.
There's a question from David who says, I asked the same question last time, but what would you do with ticket prices next year? And I'm going to apologise to David and say that, once again, we can't do that question just yet because we're running out of time for our recording session, and there's another couple I want to do that are more quickfire. We could dedicate 20 minutes, 25 minutes to the finances side of Villa, FFP, PSR, ticket prices, season ticket prices, merchandise, stadium costs, all these different things. Sadly, we don't have time to get into that today. So apologies to David, but we will touch on that either in next week's episode or, like I say, dedicate a whole episode to finances when, one, we know more about it, and two, we have more time to actually go into it properly and give it a proper answer and some actual research, I suppose, rather than just, oh, well, we might need to sell some players and kind of guess our way through it. Let's do a couple of random quickfire ones then. James says, what are you doing with Duran in the summer? And I replied to this on Twitter and said, it makes it sound like we've got a holiday booked. Are we going to Ibiza or going skiing in the Alps? Or what are you doing with Duran? But obviously, it means what are we doing football-wise with John Duran in the summer when he returns from injury at some point, in the next few weeks, maybe? Was it April or something?
Before April, hopefully. Emery said as early as the first kind of round of Conference League again. So I'd place it around like mid-March. So maybe like 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks, something like that. Keep him, number 2 striker for me. I rate Duran very highly. I don't see the kind of the big issue with Duran. I really don't. I think he's a very good player and he makes an impact when he comes off the bench, and he's 21 years old, again on a low wage, which helps Aston Villa. He's got a lot of potential. He's got all the physical capabilities to play in the Premier League. He will score more goals as he goes on, as he gets more experience. And Ollie Watkins has said before that he likes to be the number 1 striker. He doesn't like the pressure sometimes of having someone who will displace him. Duran knows his role, whether he likes it or not. I'm sure he'll kind of get over not playing as much as he wants to when he starts to score goals, maybe in the Champions League or the Europa League and stuff like that. I don't see that there's a big issue. I really don't. I know fans say a lot about Duran, that we need more experience up front and whatnot, but do Villa have an issue with their attack this season? For me, it's probably the best it's ever been in, arguably in the Premier League era. Genuinely, like, we're scoring that many goals. Ollie Watkins is going to probably break Dwight York's goal involvements in a Premier League season.
But I'd be very disappointed if he didn't. He's only 4 away, isn't he?
Yeah. Maybe I should have said goals outright. But that's my point of, like, we can look at, but Duran isn't doing his, what's this? I don't like it's ultimately it's a collective. Like, Leon Bailey's having the best career of his career, best season of his career. Diaby is a player who will be coming good soon. Ramsey's getting back into form. Tielemans is playing exceptionally well in that kind of role behind Watkins. There's more I can't quite remember now. But that's my point. And Duran, for me, just cops a bit of stick because, well, I'm not too sure why. It's his first year in England, coming from America. Then, obviously, before that, Colombia. It's a completely new culture. He's young. But when he plays on the pitch, for me, he's improved a lot over the last year. He really has. And again, I keep saying, if he does more improvement over the next year, well, then we've got a really good player on our hands there. And whether then you want to sell him for X amount or whatever it may be to bring someone else in, I don't know. But for me, I don't understand the issue with it, whether there's something behind the scenes of him not working, particularly hard in Emery's structure and his tactical ideas and stuff. Well, that can be expected, I think, sometimes with a younger player who probably doesn't want to sit in so many meetings and whatever. And this is a completely new way for him in terms of living, in terms of working under a top coach. He's never had that before. So I think we need to kind of reduce the criticism. I'm not saying the question was criticising Duran. I think it was just an open question. But for me, I like him and I don't see the issue with him. I think almost we're trying to find an issue with him sometimes, in my honest opinion. We don't need a backup to Ollie Watkins that's going to get 20 goals or whatever. I mean, that wouldn't happen anyway, but do you know what I mean? We don't need someone who's as good as or nearly as good as Watkins because, firstly, money. Secondly, as I say, Watkins, he wants to be the main man. He enjoys that pressure of being the only guy who's going to lead Villa for our whole season.
And that's working so far.
Yeah, and Duran's bubbling underneath, sort of thing. Like I think it's a perfect balance, and the goals and the output have proved that over the last season. So for me, it's no issue.
Again, a couple of quick-fire silly ones here. AFC Faithful tweeted me before we started filming saying, I forgot to ask a question, and he asked a question every single week, and then came up with, where do you think Unai Emery's favourite takeaway is? What are we supposed to do with that question? The only thing I could think of was is there anywhere near Bodymore Heath? Because we always joke about him like staying late and stuff.
Yeah,
Any takeaways on the route to Bodymore Heath you're aware of?
I was just going to say he goes up to the canteen and asks for a little paper bag or whatever. Like, paper bag? You wouldn't fill out of a bag. A little, those little cardboard boxes you ask when you can't eat your dinner at
like a little Tupperware.
Whatever. Yeah. That I think would be a takeaway, and he'd go downstairs and then eat it in his little hideout or whatever. I don't know. I'm not from. I'm south of Bodymore, and it's pretty much just a motorway there. So
there's nothing by Bodymore, is there?
I'm not from around like Sutton Coldfield or whatever, so I wouldn't know myself.
If anyone's got any recommendations for Unai Emery's takeaways, let us know in the comments down below. That's like a good idea for a title for a podcast, isn't it? Unai Emery's takeaways. Another food-related one from Holly, who asked a question earlier. What's your go-to food when you go to a match? Slightly different for you because you're home and away, and I assume there's press food and stuff. But
yeah,
maybe before that, as a fan, would you have chips and curry sauce? Or
I would always go to the burger van that the Legia Warsaw fan when he had the mayonnaise.
Mayo, yeah.
That burger van there is the one that I always would go to. It's always good. I just add like a. Sometimes I treat myself to a steak burger, but then at the time it's just a kind of standard beef burger. But that was my go-to burger van. What about you?
Yeah, I don't do this every game. I'd only do it if it's like a afternoon, 5:30 kickoff or something. I think I'm probably going to be hungry afterwards.
Do you not eat it every game?
If it's like 3:00, I wouldn't bother. Nah.
You wouldn't bother? What time do you get to the ground?
Normally we park up like an hour before.
Oh, so you're quite late.
I get to like the area of Villa Park when team news drops generally. Like I'll get team news on my phone in the car and then walk up and take my seat and whatnot. So I wouldn't. If I got there for 2:00 for 3:00, I wouldn't eat. But yeah, there's a burger van slightly further up Trinity Road we go to, and I would always go burger as well. But I went hot dog at some point last year, and they're not this big, massive. It's only like £4.50 or something. So hot dog's what I'll go for. I wouldn't buy food in the ground. I think I had chips with curry sauce once, like a few months ago. It's the first time I've eaten inside the ground for like 3 years.
Everything's just so expensive. Like not talking about Villa Park, I meant like in Sainsbury's. Like everywhere's expensive these days. Press food saves me a bit, but sometimes I don't like the press food, which like sounds very ungrateful. But I'm not a fan of like lasagna, for example. I don't like cheese.
Lasagna's cracking.
Sometimes when it's lasagna, like Chelsea the other week was in the FA Cup, couldn't wait to get there because the food's always so good. And they brought lasagna. I was like, gutted. So
I've been buzzing with that.
Yeah, I had like 4 plates of like different things that they do. That's why I wasn't complaining, because there was like beef, and like prawns and stuff. Which is
I've heard good things about Chelsea's press food offerings. I think that's the best place from what I've heard.
Yeah, from the grounds I've been at for press, Chelsea, Arsenal's very good as well.
I'd expect good things of Tottenham.
So the 3 London clubs are always good. Man United was good because it was like a buffet, so it was like all you can eat pretty much.
Wow,
but the kind of quality was a bit behind, but I'm not complaining because I prefer to eat more than like less, and I'm still hungry even if it was nice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. You prefer more crap food than less good food?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because especially away games, home games are bad, but away, for example, Fulham, I left the house at 8 a.m. and I didn't get back till about 10 or 11, which means that if you don't have a good lunch that they give you, if that makes sense, you haven't eaten like a meal until you get home until nearly midnight or something. So you need to have something really. And Fulham have stepped at the game, to be fair, so that was good. I had 2 loads of carrot cake.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was good. So yeah, I obviously ate they had like a curry.
I love how that section was quick fire. We probably spent the longest answering a question so far of the episode on random food. So to end, let's do a football related one. 2 questions kind of in one here from Adrian. It's 2 from Adrian. No way. Okay, I don't know whether that's the same Adrian or whether it's if it's different. So Adrian say, looking at the remaining fixtures for Villa, Spurs, and Man United, and can see them all getting 21 points, status quo, and we remain in the top 4. So I'll ask you, as a spin-off to that, a points target for the next 3 games. And he also says, or another Adrian says, how much do you think the Europa Conference League will affect our run-in, bearing in mind that Tottenham and Man United don't have European commitments? Forest, Luton and Tottenham next for Villa. What's the expected points total, or the XP for us?
Minimum of 7. You can kind of work that whichever way you want, because we need to beat Nottingham Forest at home, and we can't lose to Tottenham. If we beat Luton, then a draw would be, acceptable, I suppose, depending on the context of the game. But then if you beat Forest and then you draw to Luton, you're going to want to beat Tottenham, aren't you? So I think whichever way you look at it, 7 points is the minimum, but I want 9 because, as I say, if you take every game individually, well, Forest at home, we need to win that. Luton away, you go there wanting to win again. For as good as they have been for Luton, they are 4th bottom. And then Tottenham at home, you're going to want to win because it's a clear rival. So minimum 7, but we can get 9.
Would 6 be acceptable if 3 of that 6 came from beating Tottenham? It means that's a game week where they can't get anything. So let's say you beat Forest, lost to Luton, and beat Spurs. Would that still be
the issue? The issue I think we have there is if we lose to Luton and Tottenham beat Palace, then it kind of rules out what we've just done against Fulham. Do you know what I mean?
So then if we beat Spurs as well,
but then
back to where we are.
I get it, but I just think I don't want to. I understand where you're going with it, but I know what you mean. As in, like, if you're going to lose a game, anyone but Tottenham, right? But I just think minimum 7, because losing to Luton just isn't. It's just not a good result. Full stop. To be honest, so I think we have to look at it over the course of the remaining 13 games. You don't want to lose to those teams who are clearly fighting for relegation, although they'll be difficult. But I think Villa can get 20 points, which would put them, or 21 points, as Adrian said, that would put them on. Would that be 70 then?
70, yeah.
Yeah, which should be enough to achieve what we want
for 5th. Should be,
yeah. And the only thing that's kind of, I don't know, making me a bit nervous about that is that United are, they seem to be getting lucky with the way that they're playing at some points, but they are getting the points. They're on a good run, and I think they could get 70. They could, and I think Tottenham could get 70. Could we get 70? Yes. So I don't know.
I'm not sure about that, but Villa need 21 to get to 70. Tottenham need 26. Tottenham are going to get 26 points from the next 13, 2 points a game.
Well, they can though, because their games. They have
I don't think Man United will get to 70 points.
Can I load up? Let me load up Tottenham's fixtures for you right now.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll very quickly answer the Conference League thing. That will be a factor, by the way. We played the first Conference League game before Spurs and the second leg after Spurs. That's a massive trio of games, isn't it? Knockout, Spurs, knockout. So that will have an impact, of course. Tottenham don't have that. Man United are out of the Champions League. So, yes, they don't have the extra games that we do. But, again, the level is... Villa have got winnable games in the Conference League. Whoever they play, the standard is not as high as what the games they'll be playing in the Premier League are. It's just that extra workload and the fixtures and fatigue is the F word I was looking for. So, yes, that will be a factor, of course. But having said that, I still don't think United, I'm looking at the league table, I don't see United getting 26 points from 13 games.
Tottenham, in terms of the fixture list, this is what I was trying to allude to in terms of Tottenham have got some difficult games, but they have winnable. So, Palace at home is winnable. Fulham away, as we've seen, is winnable. If Tottenham play well, they win that game. So Palace, Fulham, Luton, West Ham, Nottingham Forest. They play Newcastle, who aren't particularly great. But then they have Burnley, Sheffield United at the end of the season. So that's 7 games.
We play a lot of those. I'm looking at ours in comparison. We've got, so for winnable for us, I'd say Forest, Luton, West Ham, Brentford at home, Bournemouth at home. That's 5. Brighton away, Palace away, 7. Wolves at home is 8. I'm not saying that we're going to win all of those, but I would have those as winnable. Chelsea at home is winnable.
Yeah, winnable, but I think they are difficult games. Like Wolves at home will be horrible. Chelsea, I think, will be very difficult. Brighton away, very difficult. Even Palace away on the last day. So if we need something, that will be difficult. So maybe it's because I'm a Villa fan and I'm kind of coming at it with a bit of anxiety. But I just look at their fixtures and I would prefer their running, I think, to Villa's. But again, as I said before, I'd prefer the Villa team. So I'm with you, Dan. Villa can get 21 points, which should be enough. But I do think, well, if Tottenham play as well as they can and United play as well as they can also get that amount, which would be okay because Villa would finish above them because they have a buffer. But 1 or 2 slip-ups from Villa could be detrimental. So that kind of brings me back to we need to just beat Forest. We need to then just beat Luton and forget what comes. I know that's what we're looking at, but it all just really matters what we do on an individual basis, because if we look too far, we could get caught out against Luton. Even Forest beat Newcastle away and are scrapping for points, and they've got a decent team. Gibbs White is an exceptional player, and Awani is a good striker. There's quality there. Alanga, Hudson-Odoi, pacey wingers. There's threats there. So Villa need to just win that game by hook or by crook, whatever it may be, 3-0, 1-0, and it goes in from an own goal, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and that will wrap up the show then. 13 more cup finals for Villa to go, plus the Conference League games that will be knockout, so they're cup finals, and then maybe an actual cup final at the end of it as well. So lots of cup finals for Villa from now to the end of the season. John, thank you very much for joining me on this Monday morning to answer all the viewer questions. It's been good fun as always. You can get involved with the Claret Blue podcast by scrolling down to the comments and sharing your thoughts on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and enjoyed the show, please leave us a review as well. We'll be back later in the week with something else, and if not, it'll be Nottingham Forest preview and Nottingham Forest post-match at the weekend. Cheers everyone for watching or listening, and we'll see you again very soon.